as well.
The sense of royal continuity is not broken by death, but the Queen's
moments throughout her reign of things that have happened that she's had to deal with, and she's just done a really, I think she's done just a good job, and she said it would be for her life, for the length of her life, and that's what it's been.
Here on the streets of Royal Windsor, the sense of an epoch having passed is palpable. There is the sense of mourning shared with the entire nation. But something else. For these people have lost a neighbour, a queen who was part of their daily lives. Amir Bukhari was getting calls from relatives in Pakistan who'd heard the news. He runs a cafe beside Windsor Castle.
No words actually to express my emotions. It's really sad.
What did she mean to you?
She was really important. It's not only me, it's around the world. Everybody will feel very sad, very down, very depressed. Yes, and for us, she was a neighbor, and we feel more.
No matter how long anticipated, the end has crystallized loss. The passing of a monarch who symbolized to people the best of their nation, of themselves. Long after sunset, they were still arriving. Their queen gone, their mourning just begun. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Windsor.
Some lovely contributions there from people in and around Windsor today, and Fergal there having a chat with lots of them, including people who rather touchingly called themselves neighbours, people in their shops and businesses, of course, around Windsor Castle. So that was during the day and the early part of this evening. Let's go to Windsor tonight, and my colleague Adina Campbell is there. Adina, how would you describe the atmosphere in Windsor this evening?
Well, there's a deep sense of loss here in Windsor tonight. People have been gathering to pay their respects. They've been laying flowers. Those flowers have now been moved to the Long Walk. They've also been lighting candles and sharing stories, reflecting on some of their fondest memories of the Queen. And people have travelled far and wide to pay, but of course this is close to local residents, and we can speak to one local family who got here at about 9:30 this evening. Mariam, Gordon, Maz, you're from Slough, just 15 minutes down the road. Mariam, you were a big fan of the Queen.
Yeah, I was, and I was very sad to hear the news when I found out that the Queen had passed away.
And you were here back in May during the Platinum Jubilee celebration.
Yes, I was. I was here during the Platinum Jubilee.
And how was that?
It was really fun, but it was amazing to see and watch, and all the people crowded.
Gordon, Maz, you've both met the Queen in the past. You've been in close proximity. What was that like?
Some years ago in my case, and having seen service in my lifetime, I'm proud to be here this evening, although I'd rather not be. Just an amazing lady, 70 years, and we've just celebrated a jubilee. An incredible week for this nation, one that will go down in history with a change of Prime Minister and obviously now with our Sovereign. So just very proud indeed to have had the honour of serving.
Maz, why did you feel the need to be here in Windsor tonight?
I think the Queen she's like everyone's grandmother, really. The constant that's always been there. I think everyone's going to be feeling like they've lost a member of their family, really. She's done some incredible work for this country, and we'll forever be grateful for her. There's nobody like her in the world. I'm very sad.
And what does it mean being outside her main home?
Yeah, I mean, we were only here a few days ago having a nice little coffee and summer's day, and I just said to my husband earlier that last time we were here, Queen was with us, she was alive, and today we're here mourning her loss, really. So yeah, it's a really sad day, really sad day.
Do you think you'll be coming back here over the coming days?
We enjoy Windsor anyway as a town, but this is the castle, Her Majesty and the family are very much a part of it, and there's a connection there with the people, I think, and very often, in recent times particularly, we have seen the Royal Standard here on a frequent basis because Windsor was so much her home. Obviously, she's away in Balmoral at the time of her passing, but you know, I think we have a natural affinity with Windsor, and that will continue.
Gordon, Maz, Mariam, thank you very much. Well, when we heard the news a short time ago, Windsor was still, it was silent, and there was a very poignant moment. A rainbow appeared, and that brought a smile to some sad faces.
Adina, many thanks, Adina Campbell, and thanks to your guests as well there in Windsor. One of the first tributes paid earlier this evening, as soon as the news was announced of the Queen's death, was in Downing Street, where the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, came and presented her tribute to the Queen with some thoughts on the Queen's remarkable contribution over so many years on the throne, and of course reflecting on the fact that she had been installed as Prime Minister just a couple of days ago, thanks to that audience that she'd been granted with the Queen in Balmoral. And as the guest there was telling Adina in Windsor, it is turning out to be a momentous week in which the Prime Minister has changed, and now we're in a position where King Charles III is on the throne. It is no longer Queen Elizabeth II. Let's go to Downing Street, and our political editor Chris Mason is there. Chris, lots of tributes today, including from Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer, and of course the first was the new Prime Minister Liz Truss, and what a burden in some senses for a new Prime Minister to be in a position where an event of this magnitude has happened within days of taking office.
A huge burden, Hugh, just 48 hours into office as Prime Minister, just 48 hours on from her own trip to Balmoral for her first, and it turns out only, audience with the Queen as Prime Minister. Within 48 hours, returning here to Downing Street, herself adjusting to high office as the head of government, having to find those words to try and sum up on behalf of the UK the loss of the Queen. We've learnt in the hours since that statement that Liz Truss had been informed by the Cabinet Secretary Simon Case at around about 4:30 this afternoon of the Queen's passing, and then shortly after she gave her statement here in Downing Street at around 7 o'clock this evening, she did have a telephone conversation with the King. This evening, the Prime Minister has been chairing meetings involving senior secretaries of state and staff from the royal household to discuss events in the forthcoming days, and both tomorrow and on Saturday there'll be tributes to the Queen paid by MPs in the House of Commons. And of course, for the next little period of time, the next 10 days or so, politics will fall silent. The noise and the turbulence so often associated with this postcode will fall silent. And I think there's a bigger question worth reflecting on as well tonight, Hugh, which is how the passing of the Queen shapes our national conversation from here on.
Muy buenas tardes a todas las personas que nos sintonizan a través de la multiplataforma de Planeta Televisión. Volvemos con esta cobertura especial por la muerte de la reina Isabel II. Y en el telelocutorio me acompaña el señor Osvaldo Bonaparte. El señor Osvaldo es nuestro politólogo especialista en regímenes políticos. Señor Osvaldo, ¿cómo está? Muy buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Un saludo a todo tu auditorio público.
Señor Osvaldo, cuéntenos, entrando en materia, ¿qué importancia tiene la reina sobre los habitantes del Reino Unido?
La monarca, en la monarquía británica sobre todo es fundamental, porque, bueno, en el diseño de la monarquía británica es un diseño constitucional. La monarquía está establecida a través de la Constitución y tiene un parlamento que los rige. Es una monarquía parlamentaria constitucional. Lo curioso de este caso es de que convive con la democracia. Es una de las democracias que también tiene más robustez y más solidez, pero funciona a través de esta combinación. El papel del soberano o del monarca es el de unificar todos los elementos políticos, sociales, culturales, también religiosos ya que el monarca británico representa también a la cabeza como jefe de Estado, también de la Iglesia anglicana y de otros elementos. Un papel donde también sirve para ceremonias y representaciones internacionales, también nacionales. Profundizando un poco más también, el papel del monarca permite unificar los valores, la cultura, la identidad y los elementos que le dan esa solidez a una nación, en especial a Reino Unido. Tú puedes observar en el papel de la reina Isabel también el tipo de trabajo que realizaba a través de la representación, no solamente en Inglaterra, sino también a través de otras asociaciones como la COBERTURA, además de países como Canadá, Nueva Zelanda o inclusive algunas pequeñas islas que la reconocían como una reina.
Es decir, la influencia de la reina era muy grande a nivel mundial.
A nivel internacional sí, inclusive tiene representaciones dentro de la Commonwealth en pequeños países como Belice, gracias a los tratados a los que se apegan. Por otro lado, también el papel del soberano es un contrapeso fundamental en las decisiones políticas. A pesar de que la reina pareciera que en ocasiones se mantenía al margen de una opinión, ella tiene las facultades de poder abrir el Parlamento, darle paso y legalidad y legitimidad al gobierno y con ello también a los ministros que el gobierno selecciona. La reina es quien le da la autoridad al primer ministro para poder gobernar.
De acuerdo, señor Osvaldo. Sí, de hecho, un pequeño paréntesis. Justamente la primera ministra del Reino Unido se expresaba que se sentía profundamente triste y también resaltaba la importancia que tenía la reina sobre la interacción de la oficina donde está la oficina del palacio con la oficina del primer ministro. Siempre se destacó que siempre ha existido una muy buena cooperación entre estas ambas partes, que me imagino aseguraban parte de la buena gobernabilidad que tenía el Reino Unido.
Es una relación positiva. El papel de la reina, sobre todo, es mantener esa relación con el primer ministro. Hay una reunión de gabinete todos los martes, cuando los primeros actores desde el Palacio de Buckingham o la residencia donde la reina se manejan los temas de la agenda, ya sea agenda política, agenda de seguridad nacional. Hay una excelente relación en ese aspecto. Y la reina, sobre todo, escuchaba al primer ministro sobre las sugerencias que hacía de cambios de gobierno y algunas otras acciones.
Está bien, señor Osvaldo. Continuando con el tema, ahora que ocurrió este suceso, ¿cuáles son los pasos a seguir? ¿Cuál es el protocolo que van a seguir las autoridades del Reino Unido?
Bueno, el protocolo cuando muere un soberano se designa durante años. En este caso, para la familia real de la reina Isabel, se designa un protocolo en el cual todos los miembros de la familia tenían como fuente. El de la reina Isabel era London Bridge, y la clave para saber el fallecimiento de la reina era London Bridge is down, que es el código que se difunde a través del gobierno a todas las instituciones. El protocolo inicial, que había sido practicado durante años, dictaminaba que se iba a dar una despedida formal. La reina, sin decirlo, durante 3 días se iban a colocar lutos y demás en la BBC, que iba a ser encargado. Se iba a seleccionar un mensaje que iba a decir bye, señora Robinson, como clave, y una vez concluidos los 3 días iban a cambiar. Aparecerían imágenes de la reina en blanco y negro, momentos selectivos, iban a colocar durante 3 días música triste en todas las estaciones de radio y demás elementos que permitían el luto nacional. Posteriormente de este proceso de protocolo, se designa al príncipe Carlos como heredero al trono y con ello se le da la bienvenida como el nuevo rey. Se prepara durante un periodo mínimo de un año y comienza una nueva coronación. Por lo pronto, la encargada de todos esos protocolos y de conducirlos es la primera ministra.
De acuerdo, señor Osvaldo. Entonces, el protocolo se alteró.
Se modificó, suponiendo que esto tiene que ver también con la relevancia de los medios internacionales y el aspecto de que la tecnología nos ha permitido grandes alcances de comunicación, al grado de que teníamos ya información de qué estaba pasando en vivo en Londres y en otras latitudes, y sobre todo en Escocia. Entonces, al parecer el protocolo fue modificado en cuanto a los tiempos de los 3 días de luto, hasta avisar de manera oficial el deceso de la reina, y se adelantó, que conservó la parte de la BBC como la protagonista de dar la difusión del mensaje oficial, y posteriormente el mensaje en el Palacio de Buckingham.
De acuerdo, Osvaldo. Muchas gracias por esta llamada, muchas gracias por explicarnos un poco de lo que se está viviendo en el Reino Unido. Muchas gracias por tu tiempo. Este es el señor Osvaldo Bonaparte, politólogo especialista en regímenes políticos.
Al contrario, un gusto.
Muchas gracias, Osvaldo. Seguimos en contacto.
Hasta pronto.
Ese fue el señor Osvaldo Bonaparte explicándonos parte del protocolo que se siguió, un protocolo que se tuvo que modificar por la inmediatez del internet. Estamos viendo estas imágenes, es de Reino Unido, estamos viendo el exterior las puertas del Palacio de Buckingham, donde muchas personas del Reino Unido se han reunido ahí para rendirle tributo a la reina, rendirle homenaje, para recordarla, para llorarle. Ahí vemos a una persona enfrente de la cámara de Reuters posando. Estas son imágenes que nos llegan en directo desde Reuters. Seguimos con la cobertura especial por el fallecimiento de la televisión del Reino Unido. No ha dicho mucho al respecto, mucha información nueva. Solamente han estado dando cobertura a estas mismas imágenes que estamos recibiendo nosotros. Estamos viendo ahí cómo está la transmisión de la BBC. Vamos a conectar, vamos a escuchar qué están diciendo.
And I feel that's a real quality to have had and to have showed to so many people.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think tomorrow the focus will again be at Buckingham Palace as people tomorrow wake up for the first time in 70 years without the Queen on the throne.
Están diciendo que que va a ser muy diferente y que los ojos van a estar puestos en Buckingham porque va a ser la primera vez en 70 años que se despiertan sin su reina. 8:39 están viendo una edición extendida de BBC News a las 10, 9 de septiembre de 2022, el día en que el Palacio de Buckingham anunció la muerte de Isabel II. Está diciendo que la reina murió en su residencia de Aberdeen. Ahora su hijo más grande, Charles, a la edad de 73, asumirá el trono como el rey Charles III. Y van a repetir el pronunciamiento de el Palacio de Buckingham, donde se anuncia que falleció. Pero lo que dice por ahora la BBC. Estas son imágenes que siguen llegando en directo. Este es el exterior del Palacio de Buckingham. La gente sigue ahí. la gente sigue ahí, la gente sigue ahí, no se va a ir. Tiene razón el conductor, la gente de ahí va a estar al pendiente del palacio porque mañana va a ser la primera vez en 70 años que se despiertan sin la reina Isabel.
Of the news of the Queen's death. That was at Buckingham Palace early this evening, and clearly there's a lot of focus on the response in the nations of the UK, of course, in Northern Ireland and in Wales, and in Scotland especially, where Balmoral has been such a prominent feature of royal life over the years. And the BBC's Sarah Smith is at Holyrood for us, and Sarah, maybe some more thoughts from you on the impact of the news of the Queen's death in that Scottish context.
Well, the Queen held a very special place in many Scottish hearts because she so obviously loved Scotland. And being here just last year addressing the Scottish Parliament, she talked of her deep and abiding affection for this wonderful country, as she called it. And because of the amount of time that she spent in Scotland and her clear enjoyment of it, the Scots felt very close to the Queen. She came and visited them here very often. You had the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon tonight talking about how the people of Scotland loved, admired and respected the Queen. You've been talking during this programme about where as a nation we go from here after the passing of Queen Elizabeth. And that's a question that will be felt quite acutely in Scotland, where, as you know, there is continuing debate about whether Scotland ought to become an independent country. And it's without doubt that the Queen was part of the glue that held the nations of the United Kingdom together. So without her, we'll wait to see how that debate might take a different direction, but undoubtedly people who will be unsettled by the passing of the Queen will be wondering what kind of political impact it's going to have as we ask ourselves questions about what kind of United Kingdom we are now and whether in fact we should remain united. The SNP always said, when the Queen was on the throne, that if Scotland were to become independent, she would remain the monarch, that she would still be Queen of Scots, as well as Queen of the rest of the United Kingdom. Under King Charles III, the debate may take a different turn, and that's something that people here will be waiting to see.
Indeed, Sarah, many thanks. Sarah Smith there for us at Holyrood. Of course, response as well from the First Minister of Wales earlier today, Mark Drakeford, who expressed his sympathy on behalf of the people of Wales. Let's talk to our Wales correspondent, Howell Griffith. Howell, how would you describe the general response there today?
Well, I'm here at the Senedd, Hugh, and a few people have already come to lay flowers. The flags have been lowered to half-mast and all official business has been suspended for a period of mourning. This is a place that the Queen came to know well, particularly in recent decades. It was where she made her final visit to Wales back in October last year for the 6th opening of the Senedd, and she was seen then for almost the first time using a walking stick in public. So it became very clear to people from then on that she was becoming more frail. It's an institution, some people argue, that she lent legitimacy to. She was actually part of the first National Assembly's opening in 1999. We're told, despite some official advice from Whitehall, that she shouldn't really be part of the devolution project. But she was involved, and what people here have been telling me is that she was happy to see change and wanted to be part of it rather than to stand against it. As you mentioned, the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, has added his condolences, talking about the Queen as a person of dedication and selfless devotion. All those many organisations for which she was patron in Wales, all the sporting organisations, the agricultural ones, she would be seen sometimes at the Royal Welsh Show. So lots of people wanting to express their sympathy to the family as we enter now this long period of mourning.
Howell, many thanks. Howell Griffith there for us at the Senedd in Cardiff Bay. In Northern Ireland, of course, a part of the UK that's known its share of terrible troubles, and the tension in the political process still very much in evidence. So this period of uncertainty, which certainly applies to Northern Ireland, now obviously will be taking in the changes around the monarchy as well. And Emma Vardy is at Stormont for us. Emma, how would you describe the response there today?
Hugh, there's been very moving tributes here across the political spectrum. And of course, the Queen visited Northern Ireland many times in times of peace, but also during the 30 years of conflict known as the Troubles here. And what really stands out about the Queen's relationship with the island of Ireland is the role that she played in peace building and in reconciliation. Now, of course, the big political dividing line between communities here is over the very sovereignty of Northern Ireland itself. So, of course, the Queen is seen differently by Unionist and by nationalist communities. But after the Good Friday Agreement largely ended the violence here in 1998, the Queen's visits here became hugely important for the British and Irish relationship, and that's very much been reflected in the tributes from political leaders today. We heard from the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. He said that Her Majesty reached out the hand of friendship to help with the reconciliation process. And Michelle O'Neill, the Vice President of Sinn Féin too, she said she was personally grateful for the Queen's contribution in building relationships with those of us who are Irish. So the Queen will certainly be remembered here with affection and with respect across the political divide.
Emma, thank you too for joining us and for giving us a sense of the response there in Northern Ireland. Emma Vardy at Stormont. Well, Queen Elizabeth came to the throne at the age of 25, came to the throne in rather sudden and abrupt circumstances when her father died at a relatively young age. And during her long reign, she witnessed momentous social and economic change in Britain and indeed throughout the Commonwealth. Her Majesty's death concludes a major chapter of British history, a chapter that opened at the midpoint of the 20th century as Britain emerged from the years of the Second World War. My colleague Nicholas Witchell presents this account of the Queen's long life.
I here present unto you Queen Elizabeth, your undoubted Queen. Is Your Majesty willing to take the oath?
She was 27 when she took the coronation oath.
I solemnly promise so to do.
She was anointed, blessed and consecrated. She took possession of a 1,200-year-old throne. She knew that it was a role from which only death could release her. And yet, when she was born, no one had thought that it would be her destiny. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was born on the 21st of April, 1926. She was the first child of the then King's second son, the Duke of York. This was the young Princess Elizabeth at the age of 4, visiting a photographic studio in London. Her life then was comparatively carefree. It was the abdication in 1936 of her uncle, King Edward VIII, that unexpectedly placed Elizabeth in direct line to the throne. Her father became king. His coronation gave the then 11-year-old Elizabeth a foretaste of what lay in store for her. The family unit was strong. Her father, George VI, was devoted to her and she to him. Throughout her life, he was to be her inspiration. During the Second World War, as German bombs fell on Britain, the royal family symbolised the country's fight against tyranny. Elizabeth briefly joined up. She was taught how to drive and to service an army lorry. On the night Britain celebrated victory in Europe, the crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace and Elizabeth joined her family on the palace balcony. By now she was a young woman and she'd fallen in love. Her engagement to Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten was announced in July 1947. 4 months later, they were married in Westminster Abbey.
Again and again the people called for Elizabeth and Philip. Again and again they joyfully responded.
A year later, their first child, Charles, was born. 2 years after that, a daughter, Anne. The king had been in poor health. He'd been treated for lung cancer. When Elizabeth left for a visit to East Africa in February 1952, it was to be the last time she would see him.
The flag is low as the news spreads. The king is dead.
At the moment of her father's death from a heart attack, Elizabeth was in a game park in Kenya. The news that she was now queen was given to her by her husband.
Her tour of the Commonwealth cancelled. The princess we knew as a girl and watched in the even growth of her stature comes...